I'm Austin Phillips, 29 years old, and I call a peaceful little pocket just outside Denver, Colorado, home. Got a thing for mountains like I do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Truth be told, I'm your average Joe. I crunch numbers as a corporate accountant, nothing glamorous, nothing out of the ordinary. My days usually end with me kicking back at home, whipping up some dinner, maybe flipping on a game or cracking open a book before hitting the hay. It's all pretty standard, nothing to write home about. I've been in the same cozy house for about 6 years now. The folks next door give me a friendly wave when they spot me, but we're not exactly swapping life stories. I used to love the calm, predictable rhythm of it all. That is, until a few days ago. My neighbor, Amanda Wilson, lives right next door. She's 39 with a subtle kind of beauty, serene green eyes, and a calm, anchoring vibe. She was married to Douglas, a guy likely in his late 40s. Over the years, we'd trade the usual small talk, but that was the extent of it. They tended to keep to themselves. Douglas always seemed like he was itching to be anywhere but home. Amanda, though, she had this quiet charm that stuck with you even after a fleeting chat. Then, last week, Douglas passed away. Out of the blue. Word spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. I didn't go to the funeral, it didn't feel like my place. But the very next day, not even a full day after his burial, Amanda appeared at my doorstep. It was around 4 p.m. I was working from home, still in a hoodie and joggers. When I swung the door open, there she stood on my porch, wrapped in a long black coat. Her hair was tied back, her eyes red and weary, clutching a small mug, maybe tea or coffee. "Hey, Austin," she said in a hushed tone. "Mind if I come in for a little while?" "Sure thing," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. I gestured toward the sofa and headed to the kitchen to brew some tea. I didn't pry, figuring she'd share when she was ready. She settled in quietly, hands folded in her lap, gazing at the steam curling up from her mug. For a good stretch, we just sat in silence. Then, in a voice barely above a murmur, she spoke. "It's too still next door," she said. "I thought I'd be fine, but I can't stand being by myself right now." I gave a small nod, assuring her she didn't need to explain. We sipped our tea, letting the quiet wrap around us. It wasn't awkward, honestly, it felt almost comforting. After a bit, she started talking about Douglas. She shared how their marriage wasn't exactly a fairy tale, how they drifted apart over the last few years, how she'd begun to feel more like a housemate than a spouse. No tears fell. It was as if she was carefully letting the truth seep out like a slow leak. At one point, she met my eyes and said, "I know it sounds awful, but part of me feels like I grieved for him long ago. Like I lost him emotionally way before he was gone for good." I wasn't sure how to respond, so I just kept listening, nodding here and there. That seemed to be enough for her. Before she left, she glanced around my living room with a faint smile. "It feels cozy here," she said. And just like that, she headed back to her empty house. But something between us had changed. The next morning, after Amanda's visit, my head was all over the place. My email was overflowing, reports were stacking up, deadlines were breathing down my neck, but all I could picture was her on my couch, gripping that mug like it was her lifeline. I don't know why, but her words, so honest, so unfiltered, stuck with me. Not in a heavy way, but they lingered. By midday, I hadn't touched food. I was zoning out, staring at the same spreadsheet for a solid 15 minutes when a knock snapped me out of it. I opened the door, and there was Amanda again. No coat this time, no makeup either, just jeans, sneakers, and a loose gray hoodie that looked like it hadn't left her in days. She held 2 paper bags from the corner store a few blocks down. "Bet you skipped lunch," she said with a half grin. I almost did too. Without waiting for a reply, she strolled in like it was second nature. And somehow it felt like it was. We headed to the back patio and sat down. The sky was thick with gray clouds, but the air was fresh and cool. She passed me a turkey and Swiss sandwich, and we unwrapped our food in silence. Neither of us spoke at first, and I didn't push her. She took tiny bites, her gaze fixed on the trees along the fence, like her thoughts were miles away. After a while, she broke the quiet. "It's odd. she said, her voice soft but steady. I thought I'd be shattered, you know? I expected to wake up sobbing or screaming, but instead, I just feel empty, like I'm drifting through someone else's story. I glanced at her, but she kept her eyes on the trees. There's been this weight in my chest for so long, Austin. Even before Douglas passed, it felt like the loss started years ago. When things changed between us, when we stopped truly noticing each other, it was like a part of me just faded away. I didn't cut in. I just listened, letting her words settle. She let out a long breath and went on. We were tight once, she said. I loved him, I really did. But his job started taking over. He was always on the road, coming home late, barely talking. I'd eat dinner alone, even when he was in the house. We shared a bed, but it felt like we were worlds apart. Finally, she turned to me. Her eyes were a bit misty but firm. Ever feel like you're vanishing in your own home? She asked. I nodded, not because I'd been there myself, but because I got the kind of isolation she was talking about. Most people do, in some way. There was a brief pause before she let out a quiet, almost sheepish chuckle. Sorry, she said. I didn't mean to unload all that on you. I just didn't know who else to turn to. No need to say sorry, I told her. Sometimes, you just need someone to sit there and hear you out. She gave me a look, part gratitude, maybe a hint of surprise. For the next hour, we steered clear of Douglas and sorrow. Instead, we chatted about lighter things, movies we enjoyed, go-to coffee spots. She shared a story about a cat she adopted that bolted after a week. I told her about the time I sent a company-wide email with the subject line, "Pubic announcement," instead of "public." She cracked up, a genuine, room-filling laugh, and for the first time, I saw a spark of joy in her. At one moment, her hand grazed mine on the patio table. It lingered just long enough for us both to notice before she eased it back. Her face shifted, maybe a twinge of guilt, maybe uncertainty. I should head out, she said, standing abruptly. This is probably too soon. I don't want you to think I'm leaning on you like some emotional crutch. I stood up too. You're not, I said. I mean that. She paused at the door. I just didn't want to be by myself today. I nodded. Then don't be. Whenever you need to talk, or just sit, I'm right here. There was a weighty pause, like we both sensed something had shifted but weren't ready to name it. A warmth, a connection we hadn't seen coming. She gave a slow nod. Thanks, Austin. Truly. Then she stepped out and crossed the lawn to her place. I watched her go, arms hugged tight across her chest, her hair catching the breeze. Something was different now. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew we'd crossed some invisible threshold. No kiss, no embrace, nothing dramatic. But something unspoken had taken root, and it wasn't going anywhere. The next morning was hushed. The sky hung low with gray clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a tepid coffee, half-heartedly skimming emails. But my thoughts kept circling back to Amanda. It wasn't just that she'd stopped by again yesterday. It was how her presence felt, weightier than I'd expected. I couldn't shake her words. The way she looked at me, that blend of grief and something almost familiar. And that fleeting moment, her hand brushing mine on the table, stayed with me, like it carried more meaning than it should have. Around midday, I found myself by the window overlooking her backyard. I told myself I wasn't checking for her. But there she was, standing on the edge of her porch, arms wrapped tight around herself, like she was holding something in. She looked small, hesitant, like she was teetering on the edge of a choice she wasn't sure about. I watched for 10 minutes, then 15, and when the knock came, I knew exactly who it'd be. When I opened the door, there was Amanda dressed in a navy sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder and simple black leggings. No makeup, no accessories, just her, raw and real. She looked drained, but her eyes held a subtle fire, like she'd been grappling with something all morning. "Mind if I step inside?" she asked, her voice soft and low. "Of course," I said, moving aside without a second thought. She drifted into the living room, her steps slower this time, more cautious, as if she wasn't entirely sure she belonged here. I didn't push her. I just stood there for a moment, watching as she scanned the room like she was hunting for some kind of clarity. "I didn't mean to show up," she said after a pause. "I've been debating for the last hour, but I didn't know where else to turn." "You don't need an excuse," I said gently. Amanda curled up on one end of the couch, tucking herself in like she wanted to shrink for a while. I settled across from her, leaving some space. For a bit, the only sounds were the distant hum of cars outside and the steady tick of the old clock on the wall. "I'm not used to being on my own," she said, finally breaking the quiet. "I went from my parents' house straight to living with Douglas. That's all I've ever known someone else there. Now it's just me." I nodded slowly. "That's a hard shift to navigate." She exhaled a heavy breath. "Honestly, I've felt alone for ages, even before he passed," she said. "It's like I was grieving the end of our relationship long before he was actually gone." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and I could tell they weren't easy to say. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "That kind of isolation cuts deep," I said. "When someone's there in body but not in spirit, it's an ache all its own." She locked eyes with me, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think it's bad that I don't feel ashamed being here? That it feels okay to talk to you like this so soon?" I took a moment, choosing my words carefully. "No," I said at last. "There's no set clock for healing or for finding a connection. Sometimes the right person shows up exactly when you need them. That's not wrong." Her shoulders eased like she'd been holding her breath for that answer. "I didn't think I'd feel pulled to anyone right now," she murmured. "Same here," I admitted. She glanced down, toying with the hem of her sleeve. "I don't want to go back home tonight. Not because I'm dodging anything, but because that house, it's suffocating me." Her voice carried no theatrics, just the raw truth of someone at their limit. "You don't owe me an explanation," I said quietly. "If you need a place to catch your breath, I'll get the guest room ready." Amanda blinked hard, holding back tears. "I didn't think you'd offer that." "You're not by yourself, Amanda." She gave a slow nod, and for the first time that day, a small smile flickered across her face. That evening, I grabbed fresh linens from the closet and set up the spare room while she sat in the living room, cradling a mug of chamomile tea I'd made. We didn't say much. The silence felt natural, almost soothing. Before she turned in, she approached me again, no haste, no fuss, just that same quiet warmth. "Thank you, Austin," she said softly, "for this, for not prying, for making me feel human again." Then she closed the distance and hugged me. It wasn't romantic or rushed, just real. The kind of embrace that feels solid, anchoring. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her steady. It was the kind of hug that lingers, not for what it might promise, but for how deeply it's needed. When we stepped back, she whispered, "Good night." Then she slipped down the hallway to the guest room. I stood there a moment, alone in the stillness, the warmth of her touch still lingering. For the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Not because anything happened, it didn't. But because I was hyper-aware. Aware of Amanda just down the hall. Aware of the burden she was carrying. Aware that this wasn't just a neighbor crashing for the night. This was a woman who just lost her husband, who maybe without even realizing it, had chosen to spend the night in my home. The house felt different, almost fragile. Every creak or rustle seemed amplified, and my thoughts wouldn't settle. That hug kept replaying in my mind. It wasn't romantic or dramatic, it was genuine, profoundly human. The kind of embrace that sticks with you, not for what it hints at, but for what it offers. As the sky began to lighten, I gave up on sleep and got out of bed. The house was calm and quiet. I moved softly, not wanting to disturb her. I brewed a pot of coffee and stood by the kitchen window, cradling the warm mug, watching the gentle morning light spill over the backyard fence. About 20 minutes later, I caught the sound of soft, hesitant footsteps, like she was worried about overstepping. Amanda appeared in the hallway draped in a pale gray blanket from the guest bed. Her hair was a mess, her face serene yet weary, still striking, but in a raw, unguarded way. "Morning," she said in a hushed voice. "Hey," I replied, flashing a gentle smile. "Got some coffee going?" She gave a small nod and shuffled into the kitchen, accepting the mug I offered. We stood there for a while, sipping in silence, not feeling the need to fill the air with words. The quiet wasn't strained, it was calming. Eventually, she settled at the table, tugging the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She gazed out the window for a long moment before speaking. "I'm completely lost right now." "You don't have to have it all figured out," I said. "You're taking it one step at a time, and that's plenty." She nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about yesterday, sitting here, talking, or even just existing. It felt like I reclaimed a tiny part of myself." Then she turned to me, her eyes steady and profound, not clouded by confusion or romance, just raw. "Douglas and I, we weren't really partners anymore. Sure, we shared a house, paid the same bills, but emotionally, we were like strangers living under the same roof. I didn't even realize how empty I'd become until I stepped away from that place." I stayed silent, giving her space to let it out. She needed to say it. "I came over yesterday because the silence was unbearable," she went on. "And now I'm not ready to go back. Not yet." She ended up staying all day. We didn't map out a schedule, it just happened. I whipped up some scrambled eggs and toast for us, and later she pitched in with the laundry, chuckling when she fished out a stray pink sock tangled in my whites. At one point, we strolled through the neighborhood, taking it slow, no hurry. We didn't hold hands, but our arms brushed now and then as we walked side by side. Neither of us brought it up. The day unfolded softly. That evening, I threw together a quick pasta dish with a side salad for dinner. Afterward, we ended up on the couch. She curled up, legs tucked beneath her, cradling a mug of tea in both hands. I sat close, not crowding her, but near enough. A nature documentary hummed on the TV, but we weren't really watching. Out of the blue, she spoke, her voice quiet. "It's weird. I feel this calm here, like I'm allowed to just be. I haven't felt that in forever." I turned to her. "There's no need to hurry through this," I said. "There's no playbook for what you're going through." Her eyes met mine, searching, maybe for reassurance, maybe for clarity. "Do you think it's wrong that I don't feel guilty being here?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "You're doing what feels right for you, and there's nothing wrong with that." She rested her head on my shoulder, and I didn't pull away. My arms settled around her naturally, not possessive or forward, just steady. Then something changed. She tilted her face up, and for a moment we were closer than we'd ever been. Her gaze held mine, and I could feel the warmth of her breath. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned in. Her lips grazed mine, gentle and uncertain, like she was asking a question. We kissed just once. No rush, no sparks flying, just a quiet connection. Two people reaching for something beyond hurt. She drew back. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't need to be," I replied softly. We didn't kiss again. Instead, she nestled back against me, her head resting on my chest. We stayed like that for a long time, silent and still. But it was clear something between us had deepened, and neither of us was ready to name it. Looking back, I didn't fully grasp how strong our bond had grown. Not at first. We started as two people just trying to make sense of our circumstances. But as the days passed, those simple moments, the morning coffees, the quiet evenings, started to feel weightier. Something genuine. It wasn't abrupt or theatrical. It was a gradual, understated shift. After that night, after Amanda's visit and that single, soft kiss, we didn't leap into anything. We gave each other breathing room. She returned to her house and I stayed in mine. We both needed time to reflect, to process, but it wasn't weird. It felt right. Neither of us was racing toward anything. We just let things unfold at their own pace. For the next few days, Amanda stayed at her place. She said she wasn't ready to leave it behind completely, and I understood. She needed to confront the memories, the echoes still lingering in those walls. But every day, she'd swing by for a coffee, a chat, or just a bit of solace. The grief still weighed on her, heavy and real. But something else was taking root between us two, something steady, something solid. No big gestures, no cinematic moments, just the quiet comfort of shared mornings. She'd sit next to me on the couch, sipping her coffee, sometimes opening up about what was on her mind. Some days she'd cry. Others she'd laugh, like when I fumbled my coffee mug and turned a small spill into a full-blown mess, making it worse while trying to clean it. And somehow I found myself grinning more. Having her around sparked something in me, slow but sure. I could see it in her too. Her eyes weren't just heavy with sorrow anymore, there was a new light creeping in. Her smiles came more often, not loud, showy ones, but soft, authentic ones. Her laughter flowed a little freer. She started mentioning things she'd forgotten she loved, small fragments of herself that had been buried over time. I could see her reviving bit by bit. It wasn't fast or painless, but with every shared moment, every quiet day, it was clear she was mending. Not completely, grief doesn't vanish like that. But she was learning to carry it. And somehow, without planning to, I was learning too. Then, about a month later, she asked me over for dinner. It was my first time back at her place since everything went down. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. That house carried so much history, where she'd lost so much, where Douglas used to step through the door each evening. But her invitation felt different, like a step towards something new. I brought a bottle of wine. She put together a simple meal, pasta, nothing fancy, just warm and comforting. We ate out on her back patio as the sun sank below the horizon. The evening air was crisp, the kind that invites you to pause and soak it in. We didn't talk much over dinner, and we didn't need to. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd been at this for years. No pressure, no expectations, just the clink of forks, the faint buzz of a nearby street, and a shared smile when one of us cracked a joke. As the sky grew dark and the patio lights bathed us in a soft glow, she looked at me, and it wasn't the same gaze I'd seen before. Gone were the traces of sadness or hesitation. There was a quiet strength in her eyes. "I think I'm ready," she said, breaking the stillness. "Ready for what?" I asked, unsure of her meaning. "To move forward," she said. "I've been stuck for so long, Austin. I didn't know how to break free. Being around you has shown me I can. It's not just you, it's how you've helped me see that I'm not chained to what I've lost." Her words landed heavier than I expected. I didn't respond right away, just reached across the table and took her hand. It felt natural, no words required. She smiled, a true, radiant smile that lit up her face effortlessly. And I saw how far she'd come. This wasn't just about leaving the past behind. It was about discovering something new, something unexpected but good. "I'm not saying we should dive in headfirst," she said, her hand still in mine. "But when I picture what's ahead, you're part of it, and that means something." I smiled back, a little nervous but sure. "I'm not in a hurry either," I said quietly. "But I want to be there with you, Amanda. We both deserve that." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was filled with something else, mutual understanding. No grand speeches, no sweeping vows, just a quiet confidence that whatever came next, we'd tackle it together. From that point, things shifted. Not in a frenzy or all at once. We didn't plunge into some intense, all-consuming romance. We didn't need to. We took our time, savoring our quiet mornings and long evenings spent talking, sharing small moments, just being. We didn't crave big gestures. The little things were enough. Over time, we relied on each other more, not in a frantic or forced way, but naturally. Slowly, it became clear we'd built something real, something lasting. A few months later, after countless dinners and late-night talks, I found myself waking up beside her every morning. It wasn't the wild, chaotic love you read about in novels. It was steady, true. It wasn't about roses or candlelit promises. It was about the quiet strength, the everyday support, the simple moments. And I was content. So was she. That's how I knew it was the right kind of resolution, not one where we erased the past, but one where we refused to let it shape our future.